forgetting in nothing his blessings to seek. Take time to be holy. The world rushes on. Spend much time in secret with Jesus alone. Abiding in Jesus, like him thou shalt be. Thy friends in thy conduct his likeness shall see. Take time to be holy. Be calm in thy soul. Each thought and each motive beneath his control. Thus led by his Spirit, fountains of love, thou soon shalt be fitted for service above. On prayer request, I have, of course, Nella Inman, Don Brewer, Mike's mother. I don't see Mike. Maybe it was. She had COVID, and also Janice Yount has COVID. Do what? I didn't.
Sue Hobbs.
Yeah, Sue Hobbs. Yeah, Sue Hobbs. Of course, any updates on Buddy Garvin? I don't know if he got any reports back yet. Bobby Vaughn. Of course, Karen Vaughn. Anyone else that we know of? Any updates?
Our Gertha Curtis' funeral's in the morning at 11.
Do what?
Our Gertha Curtis. She used to go to Maine, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Yeah, her funeral's in the morning at 11 o'clock at Bishop's.
Okay. Stan Beck. That's another one I had down. And remember, next Monday night, we have Monday Night for Master at 6 o'clock. Need more participants in that. Let's go with Lord in prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we're thankful that we meet in the middle of the week and to study more about your word, to share our concerns of our brothers and sisters. And we ask that you be with the people that's on the prayer list, be with Nella, with Don, and with Mike's mother, and Buddy, and with Bobby Vaughn and Karen Vaughn, and with Stan Beck, and also Sue Hobbs. And with us tonight as we study about your creation and the age of the world. And we know that everything that was you made, it, you said it was good. And we just pray that that we will take care of what we're supposed to take care of, and as we go about our daily routine, that we'll be examples to other people. I would just ask that you forgive us our sins. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. All right, you can go to your classes, your kids.
They wanted to place.
Do what?
Dean, make an announcement about Saturday,
Saturday night, we're going,
Saturday morning.
Saturday night. Why did I say Saturday night?
I don't know, if you show up Saturday night, you're by your lonesome.
Well, you have it all done. Saturday morning at 10 o'clock at Geneva's and Bobby's, they're going to do some yard work. And what do we need to bring? Bodies?
Gloves,
What?
wear your gloves,
Wear your gloves.
and if you want to bring a leaf rake,
What about a leaf blower would be easier.
I don't think we need a lawn, I don't think.
Okay. Now I haven't seen it, neither has anyone else except Randy Hughes, I think, this DVD on dinosaurs, the age of when it happened. And this guy apparently has done some research, hopefully. And I know there's a lot of debate on the age of the earth. And when I start Genesis, we'll discuss some of that. Different scholars have different ideas on it. We'll explore all that. When when the Genesis was written, they weren't concerned about time. And I'll prove that with some Bible verses. Anyway, like Jim Kelly said, it really doesn't make any difference. How old the earth is. I think Bob Cates said he was just a young child when that happened. He didn't remember what went on. So anyway, okay, you got ready, Ryan?
Cobb County, Georgia. They wanted to place stickers in the inside cover of their textbooks. Here's what the stickers actually said. This textbook contains material on evolution. Evolution is a theory, not a fact, regarding the origin of living things. This material should be approached with an open mind, studied carefully, and critically considered. Those stickers were ruled to be unconstitutional. Primarily, the judge said, because of the religious implication in the words of that particular sticker. Now, as you look at those particular words, which one of them jump out at you as being religious? You see, friends, right now, within our country, there is a great debate going on. Almost literally every single day, there is an article in the paper or an editorial, maybe a radio talk show, discussing creation versus evolution, or intelligent design versus evolution. Daniel Dennett gave parents the following warning, parents who would teach their children anything other than evolution. Listen to what he had to say. He said, those of us who have freedom of speech will feel free to describe your teachings as the spreading of falsehoods and will attempt to demonstrate this to your children at our earliest opportunity. You got to at least give him credit. He was blunt and he was honest. And he was saying, look, folks, if you try to tell your child that evolution is not true, we're going to be coming right after you, telling them what you are teaching them is false. So what is the truth? And we look at the creation evolution controversy, and we look at the age of the earth, we look at what we're being taught in the media. Exactly what is the truth? I want us to start with the question of what is the age of the earth. You know, if we were simply to use the Bible for just a moment, we were to strip aside all science, all media propaganda, just turn our focus on the Bible, can we discern exactly how old the earth is? Well, let me tell you, first and foremost, openly, honestly, there is not a specific verse that says the earth is X years old. But there are clues, aren't there? Let me show you for just a moment how we can discern the age of the earth according to the Bible. We know that today, presently, from our time back to Jesus is roughly 2,000 years. In fact, we use the time that he was on this earth to date our calendar system. Kind of makes me happy that when an atheist turns in a paper, scientific paper, they have to date it using a year that goes by when Jesus Christ was on this earth. So roughly 2,000 years. What about Jesus back to Abraham? There again, it's roughly 2,000 years. We can know that one of two ways. We can look back at secular historical documents of when certain kings reigned, or we can use the Bible. Okay? What about Abraham back to Adam? If we could get from Abraham back to Adam, then we would be within, say, 6 days or so of knowing the age of the earth. Can we do it? All we have to do, friends, is turn to probably some of your most favorite verses in the Bible. Those genealogies. So-and-so begat so-and-so. Luke chapter 3, Genesis chapter 5, Genesis chapter 11. My wife and I, we read the Bible through in a year together. And we've already hit Genesis chapter 5 and Genesis chapter 11. And I got to tell you, it's a little bit tedious as you work your way through all of those names. But what I want you to look at and what I want you to do in your own home study is notice that you're not just given names, you're also given ages. The ages which the father is when he has his offspring and the age at which the father dies. That's not genealogy, that's chronology. When you do the math, you're going to realize that from Abraham to Adam is roughly also 2,000 years. So I can stand before you today and tell you that according to the Bible, the age of the earth is less than 10,000 years old, not millions upon millions of years. Some astute student out there sitting there looks at it and says, wait a second. Brad, there's 55 generations of people listed between Jesus and Abraham, and there's only 20 generations of people listed between Abraham and Adam. And yet you're going to stand up there and tell us that both of those periods represent 2,000 years? It can't be. There's 35 generations difference. Yet, friends, ask yourself this question. How old were the people living during the time of Adam to Abraham? Vast old ages. Much longer generations. So does it make sense? Yeah. But here's the problem. If we stop right there, we send our children off to school and Miss Sally starts talking about the million-year-old earth and they pop that hand up. Miss Sally, according to the Bible, the earth is less than 10,000 years old. Miss Sally's going to pat them on the head, send them back to their seat, and ask them to remain silent the rest of the class. So what can we teach our young people to prove in a secular setting that this earth is young? I want to give you real quickly just a couple of evidences that you can jot down, that you can remember that in fact this earth really is young. If we look scientifically at things like Niagara Falls, the Mississippi River, polystrate fossils, the Grand Canyon, population statistics, we can determine that in fact this earth isn't millions of years old, but rather it's pointing to a much, much younger earth. I want us to start with Niagara Falls. Now, Niagara Falls, as the water rushes over the leading edge of those falls, we know that it's actually eroding back the edge of that fall. And we know pretty precisely how much it's been eroding the edge of the falls. It's been averaging roughly 4.7 feet a year up until about the 1960s. On the screen, you see precisely where the leading edge of the falls was at various time points, intervals. 4.7 feet a year. Now, in the 1960s, they actually built water diversion units to slow it down. So now it's, I think, roughly 3 inches a year. But prior to that, it was 4.7 feet a year. Now ask yourself this question. If the Earth really was, say, 4 to 6 billion years old, how deep, how far should the Niagara Gorge be? Friends, it should lap the globe at least 2 times by now. And yet when you look at that Niagara Gorge, it points very precisely, very cleanly to an Earth that is less than 10,000 years old. Or we could look at something like the Mississippi River. And we look at all that sand, silt, and sediment that is dumped there in the Mississippi Delta. You know, scientists have actually measured that. We know precisely today that over 300 million cubic feet of sand, silt, and sediment is dumped into the Mississippi Delta each and every year. Now, bearing in mind the fact that our continent has always had to have a way to drain itself, so that Mississippi River's been here a long time. Question would be, if this Earth really were billions of years old, how much further should that Mississippi Delta stretch out into the Gulf of Mexico? Friends, that's not really the question. The question is, would there even be a Gulf of Mexico? And the answer is no, it should have long filled in by now. And yet that Mississippi Delta is jutting out just from the bottom of New Orleans. It's pointing very clearly to the fact that this Earth is less than 10,000 years old. Or we could talk for just a moment about polystrate fossils. Polystrate fossils are simply fossils that transcend through 3, 4, 5 different striatal layers. Now, interestingly, these have been found on literally every single continent, with the exception of Antarctica, and I think only there because we haven't looked. In order to really appreciate these, what I want you to do is picture in your mind for just a moment the Grand Canyon. All of those different beautiful striatal layers, those layers that evolutionists tell us each one was laid down over millions of years. They have names for each one of those layers. Yet how in the world are you going to have fossilized trees that transcend through 3, 4, 5 of those layers? Friends, if you're a dead tree, you're waiting around to be fossilized? Are you going to wait millions of years while this first layer slowly gathers around your root tips, and then the next layer over millions of years, and the next? Or are you going to rot, decay, and fade away? While we're talking about that Grand Canyon, can somebody please tell me where all the dirt went? You know, we're told that that river carved out that canyon over millions of years, right? Well, if that's the case, we should be able to trace and figure out where all the dirt that used to be in that canyon is. And I'll tell you where it's not. It's nowhere around that canyon. I was crazy enough to take a group of young people there. We actually did a campaign nearby, took them to the canyon. There's not any dirt around. Would a global flood have caused something like the Grand Canyon? Oh, yeah. And could a global flood explain why we have polystrate fossils all over this Earth? Yeah. Does it make sense that trees were uprooted, covered in water, that sediment starts to settle back down according to its weight, according to its density? Those trees are fossilized and they're going through 3, 4, 5 different layers? Yeah. On the screen, you see a single tree that's going through at least 4 different layers. Evolution can't explain that. But creation can. What about population statistics? This is a pretty good one, an easy one to remember. You know, we know today on this planet there's roughly 6.4 billion people. I always get these inverted. We also know that the population is doubling about every 35 years. We've been taking the census long enough to know that. So 35 years from now, the population will have doubled. But we can also use that information and extrapolate backwards and try to figure out, okay, when was there a time on this planet when there was just a handful of people? You know, even taking into account things like wars, famines, droughts, when you do the math, you're going to come up with roughly 4,500 years ago. Somebody says, wait a second. 4,500 years ago? I thought you said the Bible said the earth was roughly 6,000 years old. Yeah, but what happened roughly 4,500 years ago that knocked us back to just 8 people? The flood. Friends, the numbers don't lie. Man's theories sometimes do, but the numbers don't. Also, many of you have probably seen structures like this, magazine articles, maybe actually even went spelunking and been down into caves and seen those beautiful stalactites, stalagmites. You know, they tell us that those tiny drops of water over millions of years are what formed those beautiful creations. And yet, friends, that's the Lincoln Memorial. It was built in 1922. I don't think those took millions upon millions of years to form. In fact, we know today that it doesn't take millions and millions of years to form these stalactites and stalagmites. Mother Shipton's Cave in Yorkshire, there's an area where you can hang a teddy bear, a hat, a purse, and come back within just a few days later and find your creation fossilized, so to speak. Did it take millions of years for those teddy bears to assume the look, the feel of a stalactite, a stalagmite? Nope. One of my favorites is this image right here. It's actually a bat covered in a stalagmite. Now you just got to ask yourself the question. Did that bat just sit there on the top of that thing while tiny drops of water hit his back over millions of years? Or have we been sold a bad bill of goods on the evolutionary dating system? On the screen you see hopefully you can tell what that is. That's a newspaper clipping that has an image of a fishing reel embedded in limestone rock. It's appeared in the Chattanooga Free Times, October of 2003. Title says, "The Reel and the Rock." Now, for those of you ladies who aren't real familiar with fishing reels haven't been around for 300 million years. In fact, they've only been patented for about the last 120 years. So you got a little bit of a dilemma. How in the world are you going to get a fishing reel that could have only been around for, say, 120 years embedded in a 3 million year old rock? We've actually seen it. The owner allowed us to take some pictures of it. In fact, you can lift the reel up, lift the entire rock. It's firmly embedded in there. The owner of this particular fossil, he took it to the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga's geology department. He wanted to know, how in the world could this happen? Showed it to all the geologists there. They didn't have a clue. Finally, the chairman of the department, he walks through, he looks at it, and I want you to read what he had to say about this particular find. Dr. Chernett stated, "I am the chairman of the department, and I say that this does not exist. It's a figment of our imagination." Well, I hate to be the one to tell it, but it really does exist. And friends, just because we're getting in data that disproves the evolutionary theory, we shouldn't be throwing out the data. We should be throwing out the theory. The sad thing is, usually by age 7, 8, 9 years old, evolutionists have already hooked our children. How do they do it? With dinosaurs. They are, in fact, the sugar stick candy to our children. How many 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds do you know of who aren't interested? In fact, most adults are interested in the dinosaurs. Because after all, you can go to the zoo, you can see a rhinoceros, you can see a giraffe, but you can't see a dinosaur. News media absolutely loves to give us information about them. In fact, entire journals are now solely attributed to these amazing creatures. They tell us stories like the one that came out of South Dakota about a dinosaur that was so well preserved, researchers felt like the heart was still in place. Now, given that the heart is soft tissue and it doesn't usually fossilize, it was a pretty big discovery. Or the report that came out of the Sahara Desert about the second largest dinosaur ever known to walk the earth. It's called the Parlotitan, estimated to weigh roughly 80 tons. Now, just to give you an idea how big that is, our largest imperial elephants weigh somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 10 tons. This guy would have dwarfed our largest imperial elephant. The largest dinosaur ever discovered is called the Argentinosaurus. Bet you can't guess where they found him. Texas. No, I'm just kidding. This guy is said to be 110 tons. Stretches over 3 school buses long. And just as a quick aside, when we look at creatures like the Argentinosaurus or the Parlotitan that was found in the Sahara Desert, where in the world are you going to find enough vegetation in the Sahara Desert to feed a creature that big? Unless there was a time when this earth really was a mantle of spring-like loveliness, and those animals had all they could eat from the tropical, lush vegetation that God placed on this earth. The problem is, friends, evolutionists are using dinosaurs in order to capture the hearts and the minds of our young people. On the screen, you see a page from a book called The Magic School Bus. Little boy's holding a picture of a dinosaur chasing a caveman. He says, this story is make-believe. There were no dinosaurs in the time of cave people. A little letter up at the top left says, no people ever saw a dinosaur by Flory. When early humans appeared on the earth, dinosaurs had already been dead for millions of years. People found out about dinosaurs from fossils. Thus, those children equate millions of years with the dinosaurs. Question, how in the world do you harmonize those millions of years with Genesis chapter 1? This National Geographic GeoGuide page starts out very bluntly, no human being has ever seen a live dinosaur. At the bottom of the page it says, use this GeoGuide page to help capture the interest of young readers and stimulate discussion with them. Discussion about what? Oh, the fact that no human being has ever seen a live dinosaur. It's been called the problem of the dinosaurs. Maybe some of you are probably wondering, what does it matter? And why in the world a lesson on, of all things, dinosaurs? Let me see if I can answer both of those questions for you. First off, what does it matter? Friends, I hope that you are the same studied conclusion I am, that when our friends, our neighbors, our coworkers, when they come to us with questions, whether it be about dinosaurs or baptism, they deserve honest, sincere responses to their questions. Second, why the lesson on of all things dinosaurs? 2 reasons, actually. Number one, this is one of the most frequently asked questions we receive week after week, day after day. People want to know, how in the world do you mesh the dinosaurs with the Bible? Number 2, have you ever really stopped to think about what the very first introduction that your child and or grandchild has into the organic, atheistic, godless system of evolution really is? It's the dinosaurs. Usually it goes something like this. Little Johnny, he's on his way home from school. He spots one of those perfect rocks, looks almost perfectly round. Now he knows his mom's told him not to scuff up his shoes, but today was different. Today was different of all the days, and so he hauls off, he kicks that rock, sure enough, he scuffs up his shoes, but he doesn't care. As he goes tromping up those back steps, he pulls open that screen door, tracks mud all over Mom's clean tile floor. And little Johnny's not worried about it today. As he walks into that kitchen, he sees Mom. She's standing there. She's whipping up one of the biggest batches of chocolate chip cookies you've ever seen in your life. But little Johnny walks right by that warm plate of those gooey chocolate chip cookies, that ice cold glass of milk. He goes straight over to his mom's pant leg. He begins to pull on it. He says, Mom, you're not going to believe it. Mom. Oh, it was so great. We learned their names. We learned where they lived. We learned what they ate. Oh, I wish you'd have been there, Mom, because today we learned about the dinosaurs. Just like that, Mom's thrown into the realm of the dinosaurs. And don't get me wrong, Mom is there all day, each and every day when little Johnny comes home to answer all those tough questions like that. So she looks down at little Johnny and, being the super mom that she is, pats him on the head. She says, I am so glad to hear that you're learning about the dinosaurs, about God's beautiful creation. I'm so glad to see you using your mind, learning about those amazing creatures. And as soon as your father gets home, he's going to tell you all about them. In walks Dad from a hard day's work. All he has on mind is getting in that recliner, propping up his feet, opening the evening paper. When from behind that paper comes that shrill little voice, Dad, Mom said the second you got home, you'd tell me about the dinosaurs. So without warning, there's Dad. Now, he can't defer to Mom because Mom's already deferred to him. And the grandparents are safely tucked away in an RV down in Florida somewhere, aren't they? So what are we going to tell them, dads? Are we going to do what some Christian fathers do and simply say they didn't exist? It was an excuse I heard in a toy store in Alabama one time. My son and I, we were walking down an aisle. A child was looking up at some plastic figurine dinosaurs, and his mom said, no, son, those are imaginary. They didn't exist. Now, question, how is that child going to feel when they come face to face with a 2-story tall T-Rex skeleton in one of our national museums? You see, friends, our children talking about things like the dinosaurs, they deserve more than just a quick shrug of the shoulders. They deserve the truth. I want to share with you very quickly just a little bit of history about the dinosaurs. Because in order to appreciate the complete picture, it's important to know precisely when things kind of fall into place. The most recent discovery, as far as recent times is concerned, happened in the year 1822. A fellow by the name of Gideon Mantell and his wife, they actually were going out to visit a patient. He was a country English doctor. And on this particular occasion, his wife, Mary Ann, decided to join him. They load up in a horse and buggy. This was back in the days when doctors actually made house calls. You didn't have to worry if they were on your HMO plan. They travel out to the patient's house. Dr. Mantell goes inside. Well, his wife decided to take a little walk. And as she's walking, she came across a large pile of stones, except one of them didn't look like a stone. It looked like a tooth. Only it was much, much too large to be a tooth. She picked it up. She took it back to her husband. He was amazed. Had never seen anything like it. Being in the scientific community, he showed it to some of his friends. They were also amazed. And it would be 3 years later, 1825, when Dr. Mantell would name that long-dead creature Iguanodon. You see, they actually went all the way back to the quarry from where those rocks had been cut. They found more teeth, more bones. And he realized that he had a new species on his hand. It'd be about another 20 years later, roughly 1845, that a fellow named Sir Robert Owen would come along, and he actually coined the term dinosaur. 2 Greek words, dinosauros, translated by him as fearfully great lizard. And friends, that's when our fascination with these creatures began. The question before us is not, did the dinosaurs walk this earth? Because we know they did. The question is when. I want us to look at the scientific evidence you're not going to see in your children's textbooks. but I think it's pretty strong evidence. And in fact, I think if a 10, 12, 15-year-old student were looking at this evidence with an open mind, I think they would conclude very quickly that humans coexisted with the dinosaurs. We're going to start in the late 1800s, early 1900s with a gentleman by the name of Samuel Hubbard. Dr. Hubbard was an individual who I can appreciate. He would often just go out on a gut hunch. And on this one occasion, he had a hunch that the American Indians had been here much longer than we were giving them credit for. So he took an expedition down into the Grand Canyon, off one of the side canyons to a place called the Havai-Supai Canyon. And he began to look for things like broken pieces of pottery, ancient clothing, campfires that had long since burned out. And lo and behold, his hunch was right. He found their clothing and he found their pottery, but he also stumbled across their cave art. Etched there on the canyon walls were beautiful drawings that had taken men literally hours to carve into the walls of those canyons. You say, okay, carvings of what? Well, let's see. There was cattle, buffalo, sheep, dinosaurs, oxen, men. Wait a second, run that by me again. Cattle, sheep, buffalo, men, oxen, and dinosaurs. In fact, I want you to read with me what Dr. Hubbard had to say regarding his find. He said, taken all in all, the proportions are good. The huge reptile is depicted in the attitude in which man would most likely see it, reared on its hind legs, balancing with a long tail, either feeding or in a fighting position, possibly defending itself against a party of men. He said the fact that some prehistoric man made a pictograph of a dinosaur on the walls of this canyon upsets completely all of our theories regarding the antiquity of man. The fact that the animal is upright and balanced on its tail would seem to indicate that the prehistoric artist must have seen it alive. Now, I brought with me a picture of what all he found, and I hate to be the one to tell you, but that's not a cow. It's not a sheep, it's not an oxen, but it's an awful good representation of a creature we now know existed called the Edmontosaurus. Now, friends, we haven't had the fossilized remains of the Edmontosaurus all that long. We haven't known about him that long. So the question is, how did those ancient Indians know what to draw if they'd never seen him? I want you to picture in your mind for just a moment a scene with dinosaurs in it. If you're like most people, you've probably got one of two scenes in mind. You're probably either picturing large dinosaurs maybe going down into a swampy-like area, or maybe you're thinking of one of those fierce T-Rex kind of creatures chewing on something. Probably not very many mammals in your mind, is there? You know, that's what they've told us. George Gaylord Simpson put it this way. He said, according to standard evolutionary theory, no advanced mammals were present in the age of the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs, it is suggested, became extinct in the Cretaceous period, and the only mammals that had evolved at that point, even at the very end of the period, were small, mostly mouse-sized, and rare. That's what they told us. They told us that we all evolved from dinosaurs. And yet, how in the world do we explain another one of Dr. Hubbard's find, and that is the footprints of not only a three-toed carnivorous dinosaur, but also that of an imperial elephant in the same locality? Some of you probably remember a find that was announced January 2005, in which a mammal much larger than mice was fossilized, and it was found with a dinosaur in its belly. Now you think about that for just a moment. We have a dinosaur that is found fossilized in the stomach of a mammal. What does that do to the whole theory of evolution? Well, you got a little bit of a problem, don't you? Because mammals were supposedly evolving from the dinosaurs, and yet we've got fossil evidence that points a different direction. Or maybe somebody could explain the Ica stones of Peru. You know, if you were to go to Lima today, there's an area, there's actually a museum that features these particular stones. The first one was given to a fellow by the name of Dr. Javier Cabrera. He was given one for his birthday. He looked at it. He realized that it had a fish that was extinct on it. He went to the farmer who had given him the stone. He said, "Where'd you get this?" The farmer said, "Oh, these are burial stones that the ancient Incan Indians used to put in their tombs." All told, Dr. Cabrera went out to find as many as he could, and he found over 11,000 of them. And yet over a third of these stones have very, very elegant pictures of dinosaurs on them. They range in size anywhere from, say, a basketball to just a little bit smaller than the size of my fist. I've actually got one in my bag that I will show you. Drives the airport security folks crazy. One of our Spanish translators actually lived in Lima. He was able to secure about 8 of these from the Cabrera family. And when you look at these particular stones, one of the things that really stands out is the fact that they are so detailed. And lots of them have not just dinosaurs on them. They have dinosaurs and men on them. One of the interesting things was found out just recently. The ancient Incas were drawing sauropod dinosaurs with dermal-like frills on their backs. That is, the kind of like sails on a sailfish. Scientists said, "That's not right. We've never seen that in the fossil record." That wasn't until about 1992, when in fact we did find dermal frills. A fellow by the name of Stephen Zarakis noted, "A recent discovery of fossilized sauropod skin impression reveals a significantly different appearance for these dinosaurs. The fossilized skin demonstrates that a median row of dermal spines was present, some quite narrow, others broader and more conical." That was published under the title of "A New Look for Sauropod Dinosaurs," 1992. Question: how did those ancient Incas know what to draw the first time when we just learned the rest of the story in 1992? Ellen Bishop wrote the following. She said, "The biggest spines found were about 9 inches long, shaped a little bit like a shark's dorsal fin. The smallest at the tail tip were about 3 inches high." Another interesting discovery that was made was the fact that some of the skin on these dinosaurs, they'd carved bumpy rosette patterns into them. Again, researchers said, "We've never seen that." That was until 1998, when in fact we did find fossilized skin impressions. An article stated, "The general skin pattern consists of round, non-overlapping tubercle-like scales. A rosette pattern of scales is present in PBPH 130. My friends, we just learned that in 1998. And yet those ancient Inca Indians got it right the first time. Or maybe somebody could explain to me the dinosaur figurines from Acambaro, Mexico. You know, if you were to go there today, there's a mountain called the El Toro Mountain. And it's at the foothills of this particular mountain where a gentleman who was riding on top of the back of a horse, he looked down, he saw the first of these figurines. All told, over 30,000 have been found. And again, many of them very specific, looking like dinosaurs. Interestingly, they actually sent pieces of these figurines off to be radiocarbon dated. They figured, hey, they've been fired, they're ceramic. We'll let the evolutionists date them. Now, they didn't send the whole figurine. They would send maybe a tail or a leg. They sent them to 2 places, the University of Pennsylvania and a place called Teledyne Laboratories. They didn't tell them what they were. They simply said, "Can you date this material?" They did. It came back with dates of like 2200 BC, 1650 BC, 1870 BC. They said, "Oh." They then sent 8 additional samples to be what's called thermoluminescent tested. They really wanted to make sure they had this thing right. And again, it came back with dates of roughly 2000 BC. And it was only then that they finally told the folks, they said, "Hey, you know those samples we sent you? They came from dinosaur figurines. Guess what both labs did? They withdrew their results and said, oops, we're sorry, we're unable to give you accurate results on your material. But in 1990, we caught them. Actually sent dinosaur bones to the University of Arizona. Didn't tell them it was dinosaur bone, simply said, hey, we want you to date this. No problem. It came back with a date of roughly 9,000 years before present. Friends, that's a far cry from the millions upon millions of years that they're teaching our children in their textbooks. Or maybe somebody could tell me about the petroglyph that's in National Bridges National Monument. You know, if you were to go there to Blanding, Utah today, you'll find 3 natural sandstone bridges. One of those bridges is called Kachina. And it's on that particular bridge that you're going to find this particular petroglyph. Fran Barnes, an evolutionist, made the comment. He said, there's a petroglyph in National Bridges National Monument that bears a striking resemblance to a dinosaur. Question, how did those folks know what to draw if they'd never seen it? Or maybe somebody could explain a discovery that was made March 24th, 2005. Lady by the name of Mary Schweitzer. I actually communicated with her. Wanted to know her take on the fact that she had found soft tissue in a T-Rex skeleton. I mean, after all, according to the evolutionary theory, T-Rexes went extinct 65 million years ago. She's reporting they've got soft tissue. Any molecular biologist worth their salt is going to tell you DNA, blood vessels, it's not going to stick around for 65 million years. You know what she told me? She said it was actually kind of serendipitous that they found this at all. They brought the helicopter in. The bone was too big for the helicopter to actually lift up, so they had to break it. She said it was only then that they realized inside what they had. Soft tissue from a T-Rex. Or maybe somebody could explain to me the tomb of Richard Bell in the Carlisle Cathedral. Richard Bell died in 1496. And if you go there today, you can ask them to roll back the carpet. When they do so, you're going to see his tomb all the way around the outer edge. There are all kinds of animals like eels, dogs, and fish, but one of the animals that's carved into his particular tomb is dinosaurs. Now, do you remember when I said the word dinosaur was coined? Roughly 1845. He died in the 1400s. How in the world did they know about dinosaurs in the 1400s when it would be another 400 years before they would actually get named? The gentleman who took this picture, he is a Christian named John Galloway. While he was there, he took some pictures of the pew seats where they had carved intricate carvings. Now, keep in mind, this particular cathedral is over 100 years old, and as you can tell, they were carving things like dragons and dinosaurs in their pews. There again, how did they know what to draw if they'd never seen it? Or maybe somebody could explain to me the Roman mural from the 2nd century AD showing 2 long-necked dragons. Or maybe somebody could explain the legendary first pharaoh of the United Egypt, those tablets that are attributed to Narmer, that have, in fact, long-necked dinosaurs carved onto them. You see, we've got all kinds of evidence that shows that humans coexisted with the dinosaurs. Now, the question then becomes, okay, do we have other examples of animals that supposedly lived before man? Real quickly, I'm going to show you 2. We're going to start with this creature. He's called a trilobite. According to evolutionists, he's one of the oldest creatures around, believed to be extinct today. They put him literally at the very bottom of their geologic timetable, 500 to 600 million years old. This guy is what allegedly gave rise to the dinosaurs and then the mammals. We are supposedly separated from the trilobites by roughly 500 million years. The only problem with that, in 1969, a fellow by the name of William Meister, He and several of his friends were out looking for trilobite fossils. They climbed up a ledge in Antelope Springs, Utah, tapped open some rocks. He had one. It split almost perfectly in two, and lo and behold, he found some trilobites in the sandal print of a human being. Now think about that for just a moment. We're supposed to be separated by these creatures by 500 million years, and yet you've got one in the sandal print of a human? You've just effectively wiped away 500 million evolutionary years in just one blow. I've actually seen it. I had them take it out of a lockbox here in Texas because I'd been told that you could see the sandal stitching on that particular fossil, and there's no getting around it. It is definitely a sandal print with trilobites in it. The gentleman who owns it, he's been offered millions of dollars by evolutionists who have told him very bluntly they have one thing they want to do to it: destroy it. And yet there again, the question becomes, what do we toss out? The data or the theory? While I was there, they showed me some other artifacts that were very interesting. This one is a Mesoamerican piece of pottery. What I want you to notice about it is the handle on that piece of pottery. It's a dinosaur. How in the world did they know what to carve if they'd never seen that particular creature? The second creature I want us to talk about is a coelacanth. The thing I want you to notice about this creature is his front-lobed fin. Because you see, we're being taught in textbooks that this is one of the creatures that actually walked out on the beach and he gave rise to land-dwelling creatures. So I guess really we should all stop and pay homage to this creature for just a moment. Because according to evolutionists, that's what got us on the land. They would date this thing at roughly 325 to 410 million years ago. Science now, they said coelacanths were once thought to be the missing link in the evolution of fishes to amphibians. And that's where he fits in on the geologic timetable. According to evolutionists, this was the creature that gave rise to dinosaurs, which then gave rise to all the other creatures. The only problem with that is they're very much alive today. You see, they're not shallow water fish climbing out onto the land. The problem was we were looking for them in those shallow waters. They're very deep water fish. We found out they've been catching them off the coast of Madagascar below the 18-degree isotherm for many years. In just the last few decades, they've caught hundreds of these creatures. And yet, because we find a fossil that looks like it has front little lobe fins, evolutionists jump on that and say, this is the creature that walked out onto the beach and allowed land dwelling to occur.
We're out of time. I think he's disproved evolution. That was his main theory, the main thing to do there. What the problem is, when I was in school 100 years ago, my science teacher, when we got to that part, he didn't teach the theory. He didn't even teach the theory of evolution. He said, I believe in creation. He just skipped it. And what a lot of people do today, instead of teaching it as a theory, they teach it as fact, and that's where the problem is. And a lot of people believe it. So anyway, this is dismissed with a prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we're just thankful for the time we've had tonight to study more about your creation and the age of the world, and be with us as we depart from here tonight. And we just pray that everyone will be safe. We just ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.